So, hi everybody, it's Steve Sharpley again, and got another interview today for MANKINDNESS with another great guy I know, Ben Kench. Hi Ben.
Hi Steve, good to see you mate.
Likewise, and so we're going to be looking at finding out a little bit about Ben's story, and it's all about, again, finding out how people can be successful and also decent human beings in the way that they go about the business and dealing with people. So can you give us a quick snapshot of who Ben Kench is and how you come to be doing that?
Yeah, and it's a pleasure to share, Steve, because I know that, we all tend to think, oh, my journey is nothing, but I know that in it there are some valuable things that have happened that can be shared. So I guess if I trace my CV, my life, if you like, I was brought up as a Jehovah's Witness. My mother and father were Jehovah's Witnesses when I was a small child, and I know that in itself had a huge impact on many things, because from the very early age of sort of 6, 7, 8, I was taught, I suppose, and encouraged, I suppose, to talk to strangers, knock on doors, give presentations at meetings. Mother and father separated, so I went through that angry childhood, and I think, again, looking back, I was an angry child until probably my mid-30s. Since my mid-30s, I'm just a child, but and then I sort of fell into a habit of realising that I wasn't the biggest bloke at school. So although I was in a few fights and that anger showed in many ways, I really learned that I could talk my way out of trouble, and I sort of developed a cheeky, salesy sort of skill set, which carried me through into an early life. I set my first business up when I was 17, and I realised I was just always going to be in business. It was just easy for me. I could talk to people, I could get them to trust me, I could get them to buy from me, and I found selling very easy. So we fast forward that, I was in various sales careers, did extremely well, made a lot of money, selling windows, selling other home improvement, and then going out to Tenerife and selling holiday property, real estate, timeshare, and just had an extremely good commercial life. Came back to the UK, set up a training business, because again, sales and marketing to me, I find it instinctive. A lot of businesses struggle, and so I found that there was a great synergy between my skill and their need, built a successful business out of it.
Yeah, it's been interesting. There's some great threads there. Most people have stuff they wish they could have had differently, and we can have some really positive influences from unusual experiences. So that your Jehovah's Witness background, and then the cheeky guy getting out of trouble by being able to talk to people, leading to an amazing sales career and talents that you undoubtedly have in abundance. And yet there's this bigger question of what success is. Part of MANKINDNESS is sharing around people's stories of what is success, and you've started alluding to that it's more than just that business success. So how do you see success? How did you used to see success, and how do you see it now?
My daughter is about 3, and we're in the sort of plaza area of the hotel resort that I was working in, and I'd come down to the bar after a day's work at sort of 6 o'clock at night, and my daughter was there, because the children were, the great thing about in that environment, the children are part of it, generally. And so although I was working, my daughter was there after her sort of preschool school day, and this client, the guest in the hotel, came up to me and said, are you successful? You look it, how good are you doing? Are you successful? And I said to him then, and much the same I'd say to you now, really, Steve, I view success as being able to spend your life doing what makes you happy.
Mm-hmm.
And what makes me happy, first and foremost, is being a dad. That is the most wonderful privilege I've ever been given. But extending that parental, that love of others that comes with parenting, to me now success is taking that through all of mankind, and giving that saying, if that was my child, what would I do? If I loved them as my family, what would I do? If they remember my family, how would I want them to be treated? that, to me now, is success in a commercial life.
What I'm wondering, Ben, is, you know, you've had this inside you for the last 20 years, and the way you're viewing the world. So I'm wondering if you could share some examples of how this way of caring for people, if you like, has shown benefits and worked out maybe unexpected ways in especially in the workplace, because that's what many people don't get. That actually, you know, how can I show up and be my caring, considerate self, as I think many people generally are, genuinely, but they squash it. How has that shown up for you in the workplace?
Yeah, well, you know, one of the great things that if we like to put people into boxes in the modern world, we like boxes, we like labels. Selling is a profession that I've always, you know, made mine, and when I wrote, and in fact I'm rewriting the Selling for Dummies, one of the things I was wanting to point out when I wrote that was that selling is a life skill, whereas it's always been, certainly in the past 30 years, positioned as a greedy, money-grabbing skill. Mm-hmm. And it had a negative connotation. There's a lot of people that don't like selling, or don't like salespeople, or distrust salespeople. So to go into that career, and you ask how has this attitude of others benefited? I've always pushed myself as a salesperson and as a sales director, then my teams, from a how can I work with the people rather than how can I just make money. And it always saddens me, and still does, that some salespeople are just so selfish that they don't care about the person, they just care about the commission or the deal. And I've found categorically, financially, way more than that greedy short-term game. I've found that real, I only want what's best for you. And if that means I don't get the deal today, well, then I won't push for the deal today. That is a real, people sensate me, and that's real. So whenever I've sold, and I'm very honoured to coach businesses, and I'm always saying, you know, I'd be honoured to coach you if you know, to anybody who's out there in business land now, but I'll only do it if it's right, and that is if the gain can be got, and if the issues that are currently challenging that person can be resolved. I won't do it because it's another contract. And so by having that attitude, I can say to you and your listener and your person viewing this, that if you take it to the corporate world, a genuine what's best for you is what's best for me, the finance is probably 10, 20 times the gain of that cutthroat, I want to get the deal.
Yeah, and it reminds me of one of my early experiences, Ben, where when I was in Silicon Valley, when I moved out to the States, as we talked earlier, when I was 22 and working at Monsanto and some other big companies, I worked as an account manager. I was working in sales. At the time, and I'd done some sales training, but what was missing was the heart of selling.
Yeah.
And that phrase and that kind of bringing that heart into what you're doing just wasn't aware of it at all. That would have totally transformed it for me at the time.
Yeah. And as you know, Steve, my mission now, talking to people about putting real heart into the way they practice their business. Mm-hmm. And the only caveat I put with that is that you still need to be a little bit pushy, because people, you know, we don't like change. Human beings like comfort. Mm-hmm. And so to change to some is a negative. But in fact, all of us know that actually change is a positive. We now have great changes in technology such as we're using today. Well, that's a change, but it's a positive one. So actually, we've got this contradictory mindset. And that's the same in selling. Sometimes, Steve, if I'm in a business and I have a product or a service that can genuinely help, but the business owner is possibly hesitating, and I know from my heart, with genuine reasons, that it's going to benefit. It's a bit like having medicine and somebody's being sick, and they say, I don't want to take the medicine because it doesn't taste nice. you have to turn around out of love and almost force them to take the medicine. You've got to be a bit pushy, because when they're better, they'll thank you. And so it's just having that balance, Steve, between heart, compassion, but not stopping trying if you believe that what you've got is something they will benefit from.
That's a great example, Ben, of what I talk about with around kindness and mind kindness, that it's not, some people might think of it as soft, but it's got a tough, hard edge to it with a real business benefit, that it's like that tough love, helping people do what they're struggling to do by themselves, and sometimes giving them some really tough talking to. But it's been kind, it's been compassionate, it's been supportive.
It is.
So final question for you. Who would be a significant role model? You talked about earlier your parents when you were growing up. And people will often talk about historical figures, which is easy to kind of make up our own stuff about them. But from the people you've met, who would you say have been your role models, and what is it about them?
People I've met. I've met some very humble people that do such great jobs. I went to a funeral last year, which was quite a moment, because he was my first football coach. He dedicated his life to the local junior boys football club, and everybody knew him, but he was always a bit of a loner. He'd sleep at the football club. 30 years later, I turned back up into our local town when I moved back from being in Spain, and this guy Steve was still there behind the bar and still doing the pitch lines and sweeping out the mud from the changing rooms. A very, very humble, low demographic man, but a beautiful man. And at his funeral, you know, to a degree surprised, but actually really no surprise, hundreds of people. You know, he was my first coach when I was a footballing boy of 10, and 35 years later there's 200 people there, and he's touched all their lives through that footballing community. So role models like that come out of nowhere, that you probably don't value so much almost until they're gone. And you know, I try to emulate that in the way I am a coach. I coach boys football, and I try to have the same sort of, you don't know where this is going to lead in 30 years time, what will be their memory. So here's a very powerful role model for me. I think that Tim Berners-Lee is a hero of mine. You know, the man that created the internet that so many people use and don't even know who was behind it. I mean, the man's a legend. Yeah. You know, he should be far more foreground. So yeah, I think if you're a person that likes to look up, there's a lot of wonderful people to look up to, and some of them aren't that high, but they are so worthy of looking up to.
I really both enjoyed and appreciated your time with us today, Ben. You know, how do people find out?
Steve, Ben Kench, Kench, benkench.com. That is my blog site. I'm constantly putting articles up there. Anybody that wants to stay close, I stay in touch.
Thanks for everybody joining in today, and whenever you're looking at this, you know, this is about sharing role models and the lessons that we can all learn from about mankindness, and just proving and providing the evidence that mankindness is a kind of success worth getting, both acquiring and getting in the heart as well. So Ben, thanks once again, and everybody else, have a great day.